Maya Rodriguez pushed through the heavy glass doors of Le Jardin restaurant at exactly 5:30 p.m. The cool air hit her face as she stepped inside the fancy dining room. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling like frozen raindrops. White tablecloths covered every table. Fresh flowers sat in tall vases everywhere she looked. She hurried to the back room to change into her work uniform. The black dress and white apron made her look like all the other servers. But Maya was different from most of them. She was 24 years old and had been working at this restaurant for 3 years. Every day felt the same. She served rich people their expensive food and smiled even when they were rude to her. Maya lived with her grandmother in a small apartment in Queens. The rent was high and her grandmother needed medicine every month. The medicine cost more money than Maya made in a week. But she never complained. Her grandmother had raised her since she was 7 years old. Maya would do anything to take care of her. The restaurant manager, Mr. Peters, called all the servers together for the evening meeting. He was a short man with gray hair who always looked worried about something. "Tonight we have several important guests," he said. "Table 12 has Mr. Marcus Blackwell. He owns that big tech company you see on the news. He comes here every month with business partners. Give him whatever he wants." Maya knew about Marcus Blackwell. She had served his table many times before. He was a tall man with dark hair and expensive suits. He always ordered the most costly items on the menu. He spoke to servers like they were not real people. He never said please or thank you. He just pointed at things and expected them to appear. Maya remembered the first time she served his table. She had accidentally brought him the wrong wine. He had looked at her like she was stupid and said, "Do you even know what you're doing? Maybe you should find a job you can actually handle." His friends had laughed. Maya's face had turned red, but she had apologized and brought the right wine. That night, Maya was assigned to serve table 12 again. She saw Marcus arrive with 3 other men in expensive suits. They talked loudly about money and business deals. Maya approached their table with water glasses and menus. "Good evening," she said with a smile. "My name is Maya, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Marcus looked up from his phone. "Just bring us the usual," he said without looking at her face. "And make sure the wine is the right temperature this time." Maya felt her cheeks get warm. He was talking about something that happened 6 months ago. She nodded and walked away to get their drinks. As she worked, Maya found herself humming quietly. It was something she always did when she felt nervous or upset. The melody was from a piano piece she used to know very well. Music had been a big part of her life once, but that felt like a different lifetime now. She brought the men their wine and appetizers. They barely noticed her. They were too busy talking about buying and selling companies. Maya stood nearby in case they needed anything. She tried not to listen, but their voices were loud. "The problem with poor people," Marcus was saying, "is that they don't try hard enough. They accept their situation instead of working to change it." One of his friends nodded. Exactly. If they wanted better lives, they would make better choices. Maya bit her lip and looked down at the floor. She wanted to tell them about her grandmother's medical bills. She wanted to explain how she worked 2 jobs and still couldn't save money. She wanted to say that some people didn't choose to be poor, but she needed this job. So she stayed quiet. Later that evening, Maya was cleaning glasses behind the bar when she heard piano music coming from the restaurant's sound system. It was a piece by Chopin that she recognized immediately. Without thinking, she began to hum along with the melody. Her fingers moved slightly as if she was playing invisible piano keys. "You know that song?" asked Carlos, the bartender. He was an older man who had worked at the restaurant for 10 years. Maya stopped humming immediately. "Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I was doing that." "Don't apologize," Carlos said with a smile. "You have a nice voice. Do you play piano?" Maya hesitated. "I used to. A long time ago." She didn't tell him the whole truth. She had been studying piano since she was 5 years old. Her parents had saved money for lessons because they saw how much she loved music. Her teacher had said she had real talent. She had won competitions and performed in recitals. Everyone said she could have a career in music. But when Maya was 17, her parents died in a car accident. Suddenly, she had to take care of her grandmother and pay all the bills. There was no money for piano lessons anymore. There was no time for practice. She had to work to survive. Sometimes late at night, Maya would sit at the old keyboard in her apartment. It was missing several keys and the sound was terrible, but she would play quietly so she wouldn't wake her grandmother. The music reminded her of happier times. It also reminded her of dreams she had to give up. The evening continued with more customers and more work. Maya served families celebrating birthdays and couples on dates. She smiled and took orders and pretended that everything was fine. This was her life now. She had accepted it. Near the end of her shift, Maya was wiping down tables when she overheard Marcus talking on his phone. He was standing near the restaurant's baby grand piano that sat in the corner. The piano was just for decoration. No one ever played it. "I'm planning a charity event next month," Marcus was saying. "Something to help poor kids learn music. It will be good for my company's image." Maya almost laughed. Here was a man who treated working people badly, talking about helping poor children. But she kept cleaning tables and pretended she wasn't listening. As Maya got ready to leave work that night, she looked back at the piano one more time. The black and white key seemed to call to her. For just a moment, she imagined sitting down and playing. She imagined her fingers moving across the keys the way they used to. She imagined making beautiful music again. But then she remembered her grandmother waiting at home. She remembered the bills that needed to be paid. She remembered that dreams were expensive things that poor people couldn't afford. Maya walked out into the cold night air and headed home. She had no idea that her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. 2 weeks later, Maya was folding napkins in the back room when Mr. Peters called her into his office. She wondered if she had done something wrong. Her heart beat faster as she knocked on his door. "Come in," Mr. Peters said. He was sitting behind his desk with papers spread everywhere. "Maya, I have something to discuss with you." Maya sat down in the chair across from him. "Is everything okay?" "Actually, yes. You've been chosen for a special job." Mr. Peters picked up a piece of paper. "Mr. Blackwell specifically asked for you to work at his private party next Saturday night." Maya was surprised. Marcus had never seemed to notice her as anything more than a server. "Are you sure he asked for me?" "Yes, he mentioned you by name. He said you provide excellent service." Mr. Peters looked at the paper again. "The party is at his penthouse apartment. It's a charity event for some music program for kids. You'll work from 6 p.m. to midnight. The pay is triple your normal rate." Maya's eyes went wide. Triple pay meant she could afford her grandmother's medicine for the next month without worry. But working for Marcus in his home made her nervous. At the restaurant, there were other people around. There were rules and managers. At his apartment, he could treat her however he wanted. "Do I have to accept?" Maya asked. Mr. Peters frowned. "Maya, this is a big opportunity. Mr. Blackwell is one of our most important customers. If you do well at his party, he might request you for other events. Rich people pay well for good service." Maya thought about the money. She thought about her grandmother's medicine. She thought about the rent that was due next week. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." "Good. Wear your best black dress and white apron. Be professional and polite. Don't speak unless someone asks you a question." Mr. Peters handed her a card with an address. "This is his building. The doorman will be expecting you." Maya took the card and went back to work. The rest of the day felt strange. She couldn't stop thinking about why Marcus had asked for her specifically. In 3 years of serving him, he had barely looked at her face. Now suddenly he wanted her at his private party. That evening, Maya went home to her grandmother's apartment. The building was old and the elevator was broken again. She climbed 5 flights of stairs to their door. Inside, her grandmother was watching television and knitting a scarf. "How was work today, mija?" her grandmother asked. She always spoke a mix of English and Spanish. She had come to America from Mexico 50 years ago but still kept her accent. "I got chosen for a special job," Maya said. She sat down next to her grandmother on the old couch. "A rich man wants me to work at his party. The pay is really good." Her grandmother looked concerned. "What kind of party?" "A charity event. To help kids learn music." Maya held her grandmother's hand. "The money will pay for your medicine and our rent." Her grandmother squeezed Maya's hand. "You work so hard, mija. Sometimes I feel bad that you gave up your music for me." "Don't say that, abuela. Music was just a hobby. Taking care of you is what matters." But Maya's grandmother was not fooled. She remembered the little girl who used to play piano for hours every day. She remembered how Maya's face would light up when she heard a beautiful song. She remembered the competitions and the recitals and the dreams of studying at a famous music school. "Music was never just a hobby for you," her grandmother said quietly. "It was your heart." Maya didn't know what to say. Her grandmother was right, but there was no point in talking about the past. Their life now was about surviving, not dreaming. The next few days passed quickly. Maya worked her regular shifts at the restaurant and tried not to think about the party. But she noticed that Marcus seemed to be watching her more carefully than usual. When she brought him his food, he would stare at her for a few extra seconds. When she hummed while cleaning tables, she caught him looking in her direction. On Friday night, Carlos the bartender asked Maya to help him move some boxes in the storage room. As they worked, he started talking about music. "My daughter is taking piano lessons," he said. "She's only 8, but she's pretty good. She reminds me of someone I used to know who could really play." "That's nice," Maya said, not wanting to continue the conversation. "You know, I heard you humming the other night. It was a classical piece, wasn't it?" "Most people don't know that kind of music." Maya felt uncomfortable. "I just heard it on the radio." Carlos smiled. "My wife teaches piano. She says you can tell when someone really understands music. It's not just about knowing the notes. It's about feeling the emotion behind them." Maya pretended to be busy with the boxes. She didn't want to talk about music. It made her remember things she was trying to forget. Saturday evening came too quickly. Maya put on her best black dress and white apron. She looked at herself in the mirror and practiced smiling. She reminded herself that this was just another job. She would serve food and drinks, collect her money, and go home. Maya took the subway to Manhattan. Marcus's building was in the most expensive part of the city. The doorman wore a uniform that probably cost more than Maya made in a month. He checked her name on a list and pointed her toward the elevator. "Penthouse," he said. "Press the button marked PH." Maya rode the elevator up 40 floors. Her ears popped from the height. When the doors opened, she stepped into the most beautiful apartment she had ever seen. The ceilings were 20 feet high. Huge windows showed the entire city sparkling below. Expensive paintings covered the walls. And in the center of the main room sat a black grand piano that took Maya's breath away. It was bigger and more beautiful than any piano she had ever seen. The top was open, showing the strings inside. The bench was covered in soft velvet. Just looking at it made her fingers itch to touch the keys. "You must be Maya," said a voice behind her. Maya turned around to see Marcus walking toward her. He was wearing a black suit that probably cost more than she made in a year. His hair was perfectly styled and his shoes were shined to reflect the lights. "Yes, sir," Maya said. "I'm here to work your party." Marcus smiled, but something about it made Maya feel nervous. "Perfect. Let me show you around and explain what I need from you tonight." He led her through the apartment, showing her the kitchen where other staff were preparing food. There were 3 other servers, 2 bartenders, and a chef. Maya was relieved that she wouldn't be alone with Marcus and his guests. "This is a very important evening for me," Marcus said as they walked. "I'm raising money for a program that teaches music to poor children. All the most important people in the city will be here." Maya nodded and tried to look interested, but she couldn't stop thinking about the piano. Every time they walked past it, she felt drawn to it like a magnet. "Do you know anything about music, Maya?" Marcus asked suddenly. The question caught her off guard. "A little," she said carefully. "That's what I thought. I've noticed you humming sometimes at the restaurant. Classical pieces, if I'm not mistaken." Maya's heart started beating faster. Why was he asking about this? "I just like music," she said. Marcus's smile got wider. "Well, tonight you'll hear some beautiful music. I'm sure you'll enjoy it." Something in his voice made Maya feel like she was walking into a trap, but she didn't know what else to do except smile and nod. The guests began arriving at 7 o'clock. Maya had never seen so many rich and important people in one place. She recognized faces from magazines and television. Everyone wore clothes that cost more than most people made in a year. The women had jewelry that sparkled like stars. Maya served drinks and appetizers. She tried to stay invisible and just do her job. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus was planning something. Every time she looked up, he seemed to be watching her. As the evening went on, Maya learned more about the guests. There were business owners and politicians. There were famous artists and musicians. Everyone seemed to know everyone else. They talked about their expensive vacations and their second homes. But Maya also noticed something else. Many of these people seemed genuinely interested in helping children learn music. They talked about how important arts education was. They shared stories about how music had changed their own lives. Maybe Marcus really was trying to do something good, Maya thought. Maybe she had been wrong to be suspicious of him, but deep down something still felt wrong. And when Maya caught Marcus staring at her with that strange smile, She knew that this evening was going to be more complicated than just serving food and drinks. By 9 o'clock, the party was in full swing. Maya had served champagne to more than 50 guests. Her feet hurt from walking around in high heels on the marble floors. But the evening was going smoothly. The guests were polite and the other staff members were friendly. Maya was in the kitchen refilling her tray when she heard Marcus's voice getting louder in the main room. He was starting to make some kind of speech. She could hear people putting down their glasses and gathering around him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus called out, "thank you all for coming tonight and supporting this important cause." Maya picked up her tray and walked back into the main room. Marcus was standing next to the piano with a microphone in his hand. All the guests had formed a circle around him. The room was quiet except for his voice. "As you know, tonight we're raising money to help poor children learn music," Marcus continued. "Music education is something that should be available to everyone, not just those who can afford it." The guests nodded and smiled. Several people clapped. Maya stood near the back of the room holding her tray and trying to stay out of the way. "But I think we sometimes forget," Marcus said, "that talent exists everywhere, even in places we might not expect to find it." His eyes scanned the room until they found Maya. "Sometimes the most amazing abilities are hidden right in front of us." Maya felt her stomach drop. Something bad was about to happen. She could feel it in the way Marcus was looking at her. She wanted to disappear, but there was nowhere to go. "For example," Marcus said, pointing directly at Maya, "our server tonight has a musical background that might surprise you all." Every head in the room turned to look at Maya. She felt her face turn bright red. Her hand started shaking so much that the glasses on her tray began to rattle. She wanted to run away, but her feet felt frozen to the floor. "Maya," Marcus called out, waving her forward. "Come here for a moment." Maya didn't move. She couldn't move. Everyone was staring at her like she was some kind of zoo animal. Rich, important people in expensive clothes, all looking at the poor server girl who didn't belong in their world. "Don't be shy," Marcus said with that fake smile. "These wonderful people would love to hear about your musical talents." Maya finally found her voice. "I'm sorry, sir, but I'm just here to work. I should get back to serving drinks." But Marcus wasn't going to let her escape that easily. "Nonsense. Tonight is about celebrating music and hidden talent. I insist." One of the other servers came over and took Maya's tray from her shaking hands. Now she had no excuse to leave. Everyone was still staring at her. She felt like she might throw up. Maya walked slowly toward Marcus on legs that felt like they might collapse. When she reached him, he put his hand on her shoulder in a way that seemed friendly, but felt like a trap. "Maya here has been working at my favorite restaurant for years," Marcus announced to the crowd. "And I've noticed that she sometimes hums classical music while she works. Beautiful pieces by Mozart and Chopin." Maya's eyes went wide. How did he know about that? She thought she had been humming quietly. She didn't realize anyone had been paying attention. "So I thought," Marcus continued, "what better way to kick off our evening of music appreciation than to have Maya share her talent with us?" Maya's mouth went dry. "I don't have any talent," she whispered. "I just like music." But Marcus ignored her protests. "I'm sure you're just being modest. After all, someone doesn't hum complex classical pieces unless they have real musical training." The guests began murmuring among themselves. Some looked curious. Others looked uncomfortable, like they could sense that something wasn't right about this situation. But no one spoke up to stop what was happening. "I really can't," Maya said, her voice getting smaller. "I haven't played piano in years. I would embarrass myself." "Perfect," Marcus said loudly. "That's exactly the spirit we need tonight. Someone who isn't afraid to try, even if they're not perfect. That's what this charity is all about, giving people chances to express themselves through music." Maya looked around the room desperately. All these rich, powerful people were watching her like she was entertainment for their evening. Some had their phones out, ready to record whatever happened next. She felt trapped and humiliated. "Please," Maya said quietly. "I really don't want to play." But Marcus was enjoying himself too much to stop now. "Come on, everyone," he said to the crowd. "Let's encourage Maya to share her gift with us." The guests began clapping and calling out encouragement. "Yes, please play something. We'd love to hear you. Don't be nervous." Maya realized that these people had no idea what Marcus was really doing. They thought this was a sweet moment where a working-class person was getting a chance to shine. They didn't understand that she was being forced into a humiliating situation. Marcus led Maya toward the piano bench. The instrument looked even bigger and more intimidating up close. Maya hadn't touched a real piano in over 7 years. Her hands were shaking. Her mind was blank. She couldn't remember any of the pieces she used to know by heart. "What would you like to play?" Marcus asked loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Something classical? Maybe that Chopin piece I heard you humming?" Maya sat down on the piano bench and stared at the keys. They looked like rows of white and black teeth ready to bite her. She couldn't do this. She was going to make a fool of herself in front of all these important people. Marcus would get exactly what he wanted, a poor server girl failing at something she had no business trying. "I can't remember anything," Maya said, her voice barely audible. "Sure you can," Marcus said. "Just start with something simple. Anything at all." The room was completely silent now. 50 pairs of eyes were focused on Maya. She could hear people shifting their feet and breathing. Someone coughed. A glass clinked somewhere in the background. Maya lifted her hands toward the keys and then stopped. This was wrong. Marcus was using her to entertain his guests. He wanted to watch her fail so he could feel superior. He was treating her like a performing animal, not a human being. But then she thought about her grandmother at home. She thought about the medicine they needed to buy. She thought about the rent that was due. She thought about the triple pay she would lose if she walked away from this job. Maya closed her eyes and tried to remember the feeling of playing piano when she was young. She tried to forget about the audience and Marcus and the humiliation. She tried to find the music that used to live in her heart. Slowly, very slowly, she placed her fingers on the keys. The piano felt cold under her touch. She pressed down on middle C and the note rang out clear and pure in the silent room. For a moment, Maya felt like she was 17 again. For a moment, she remembered what it was like to love music more than anything else in the world. For a moment, she forgot about everything that had gone wrong in her life. And then she began to play. What happened next would change everything, not just for Maya, but for everyone in that room who was about to witness something they would never forget. Marcus stood behind her with his arms crossed, waiting for her to stumble through a simple tune so he could feel superior. The guests held their breath, hoping this poor girl wouldn't embarrass herself too badly. None of them were prepared for what was about to happen. None of them knew they were about to hear one of the most beautiful performances of their lives. Maya's fingers found their way to the keys like they had never left. 7 years of silence were about to end in the most spectacular way possible. Maya's fingers touched the keys and something magical happened. 7 years of silence melted away in an instant. Her hands remembered exactly where they belonged. The music came flooding back like water breaking through a dam. She began with the opening notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. It was one of the most difficult pieces in classical piano literature. Maya had learned it when she was 16 and it had taken her months to master. But now, sitting at Marcus's piano, her fingers moved across the keys like they had been practicing every day for 7 years. The first few notes were soft and gentle, like a question being asked. Maya's touch was perfect, not too hard, not too soft. Each note rang out clear and pure in the silent room. The guests stopped breathing. Marcus stopped smiling. As the melody continued, Maya began to relax. The music wrapped around her like an old friend welcoming her home. She forgot about the audience. She forgot about Marcus and his cruel plan. She forgot about everything except the beauty of the sound she was creating. The piece grew more complex. Maya's left hand played a steady rhythm while her right hand danced through the melody. Her fingers moved so fast they were almost a blur, but every note was perfect. Every phrase was shaped with emotion and understanding. The guests began to look at each other with wide eyes. This wasn't what they had expected. This wasn't a server girl stumbling through a simple tune. This was a master musician performing one of the greatest pieces ever written. Maya reached the first dramatic section of the ballade. The music became passionate and powerful. Her whole body moved with the rhythm. She leaned into the forte passages and pulled back for the gentle moments. Every movement was graceful and natural, like she was dancing with the piano. Someone in the audience gasped. Maya's playing was so beautiful it brought tears to people's eyes. The emotion in her performance was raw and real. She wasn't just playing the notes. She was telling a story with the music. She was sharing her heart with everyone in the room. Marcus stood frozen behind her. His plan had backfired completely. Instead of humiliating Maya, He had given her a stage to show her incredible talent. Instead of making her look foolish, he had revealed that she was more gifted than most professional musicians. The middle section of the ballade was like a gentle conversation between old friends. Maya's touch became soft and tender. She played with perfect control, making the piano sing instead of just making noise. Each phrase flowed into the next like water flowing in a stream. People in the audience began pulling out their phones to record. This was something special. This was something they would want to remember and share. A few guests started taking pictures, but they did it quietly, not wanting to disturb the magic happening at the piano. Maya's grandmother had always said that music was a language that everyone could understand. Tonight, Maya was speaking that language fluently. She was telling the story of her life through Chopin's notes, the struggles and the heartbreak and the dreams that never died. The piece built toward its climactic moment. Maya's hands flew across the keys with impossible speed and precision. The music became wild and passionate, like a storm breaking over the ocean. But even in the most difficult passages, every note was crystal clear. Some of the guests were crying now. They had never heard anything so beautiful. They had been to countless concerts and operas, but they had never witnessed anything like this. Maya wasn't just playing the piano. She was pouring her soul into the music. A woman near the front of the audience looked familiar, but Maya was too focused on the music to notice. The woman's hands were pressed to her mouth in shock. Her eyes were filled with tears. She recognized not just the incredible skill, but something else. Something that made her heart race with excitement and disbelief. Maya reached the final section of the ballade. The music became gentle again, like saying goodbye to someone you love. Her touch was so soft that the notes seemed to float in the air. The melody was heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time. As the last notes faded away, the room remained completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. Then someone started clapping. One person, then two, then suddenly the entire room exploded in applause. People were not just clapping, they were cheering and calling out. Several guests were wiping tears from their eyes. Maya lifted her hands from the keys and looked around in shock. She had forgotten there was an audience. For those 15 minutes, she had been alone with the music. Now reality came crashing back. Incredible, someone shouted. Amazing, called out another voice. I've never heard anything like that. Maya stood up from the piano bench on shaking legs. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She had played a complete piece from memory without making a single mistake. And not just any piece, one of the most difficult in all of classical music. Marcus looked like he had seen a ghost. His face was pale and his mouth was hanging open. This was not what he had planned. He had wanted to embarrass Maya, but instead he had given her a platform to shine brighter than anyone else in the room. The applause continued for several minutes. People were calling out praise and asking questions. Where did you learn to play like that? Have you recorded any albums? Do you give concerts? Maya felt overwhelmed. She had gone from being invisible to being the center of attention in a way she never could have imagined. Part of her wanted to run away and hide, but another part of her felt alive in a way she hadn't felt in 7 years. Then the woman from the front of the audience pushed through the crowd. She was an older lady with silver hair and elegant clothes. She looked like she might be in her 70s, but she moved with purpose and energy. Excuse me, the woman said as she reached Maya. I need to speak with you immediately. Maya looked at her with confusion. I'm sorry, but I should get back to work. The woman shook her head. No, dear. Work can wait. This is much more important. She took Maya's hands in hers and looked directly into her eyes. My name is Eleanor Whitman. I used to be the director of the Manhattan Conservatory of Music. Maya's eyes went wide. She knew that name. The Manhattan Conservatory was one of the most famous music schools in the world. Eleanor Whitman was a legend in the classical music community. I need to ask you something very important. Eleanor continued. What is your full name? Maya Rodriguez, Maya answered, still confused. Eleanor's face went completely white. She gripped Maya's hands tighter. Rodriguez. I thought so. You look just like her. Tears began to form in Eleanor's eyes. Maya, I knew your mother. The room seemed to spin around Maya. You knew my mother? Isabella Rodriguez. She was one of my students at the conservatory 25 years ago. One of the most talented students I ever taught. Eleanor's voice was shaking with emotion. She told me she had a daughter who was showing incredible musical promise. A little girl who could play anything by ear. Maya felt like she might faint. Her mother had studied at the Manhattan Conservatory. Her mother had been taught by Eleanor Whitman. I lost touch with Isabella after she graduated, Eleanor continued. I heard she got married and moved to Queens. I always wondered what happened to her and her musical daughter. The crowd around them had grown quiet. Everyone was listening to this amazing revelation. Marcus stood at the edge of the group, looking smaller and more uncomfortable by the minute. My parents died when I was 17, Maya said quietly. I had to quit music to take care of my grandmother. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Oh, my dear girl. I'm so sorry. But Maya, what you just played, that wasn't the playing of someone who quit music 7 years ago. That was the playing of someone who has music in her very soul. Maya didn't know what to say. Everything was happening too fast. 20 minutes ago, she had been a server trying to stay invisible. Now she was the center of attention, and one of the most important people in classical music was telling her about her mother's secret past. But the biggest shock was still to come. What Eleanor said next would change Maya's life forever. Eleanor held Maya's hands and looked into her eyes with intensity. Maya, I need to tell you something about your mother that you might not know. The room was still completely quiet. Everyone was hanging on every word. Even the other servers had stopped working to listen. Maya felt like she was in a dream. Your mother didn't just study at the conservatory, Eleanor continued. She was my star pupil. Isabella had a gift that comes along maybe once in a generation. She could have been one of the great concert pianists of our time. Maya's legs felt weak. She had never known this about her mother. But why didn't she tell me? Eleanor smiled sadly. Because she was more interested in being a mother than being famous. When you were born, Isabella made a choice. She decided that raising you was more important than having a career in music. Someone in the crowd pulled out their phone and started recording. This was turning into something much bigger than anyone had expected. They were witnessing not just an amazing performance, but the discovery of a hidden musical legacy. I remember the last time I saw your mother, Eleanor said. You were about 5 years old. Isabella brought you to the conservatory for a visit. You sat down at one of our grand pianos and started playing a Mozart sonata that you had only heard once on the radio. Maya's eyes went wide. She had a vague memory of visiting a big music school when she was little. She remembered a room full of pianos and a kind older woman who had been amazed by her playing. That was you, Maya whispered. I remember you now, Eleanor nodded with tears in her eyes. You were the most naturally gifted child I had ever encountered. Your mother knew it too. She started giving you lessons when you were tiny. But she also made sure you had a normal childhood with friends and games and everything else. The crowd was completely captivated. This story was better than any movie. A young woman discovers she has incredible talent, then learns that her gift was inherited from a mother who gave up her own dreams to raise her daughter. Your mother called me when you started winning competitions, Eleanor continued. She was so proud of you. She told me you had surpassed her abilities by the time you were 14. She said you could have a full scholarship to any music school in the world. Maya felt overwhelmed, but then my parents died and everything changed. I know, dear. I heard about the accident. I tried to find you afterward, but you had moved and changed schools. I always wondered what happened to Isabella's daughter with the magic fingers. A man in the crowd stepped forward. Maya recognized him as someone famous, but she couldn't remember his name. Excuse me, he said. I'm Jonathan Webb from the New York Times. I write about classical music. Could I ask you a few questions? Maya looked around nervously. This was all happening too fast. 20 minutes ago, she was just trying to earn money to pay for her grandmother's medicine. Now reporters wanted to interview her. I don't think I should talk to reporters, Maya said. I'm just a server. Eleanor squeezed her hands. Maya, after what I just heard, you are definitely not just a server. You are one of the most gifted pianists I have ever encountered, and I've been in this business for 50 years. Someone else pushed through the crowd. It was a young woman with a professional camera. I'm Sarah Chen from Classical Music Today magazine. Would it be okay if I took some photos? This is an incredible story. Maya felt panicked. Please, I just want to go back to work. But Marcus, who had been standing silently at the edge of the crowd, finally spoke up. Actually, Maya, I think you should talk to these people. This is exactly what tonight is about. Discovering and supporting musical talent. Maya looked at him with anger. You didn't want to support my talent. You wanted to embarrass me. The crowd turned to look at Marcus. Some people were starting to understand what had really happened here. Marcus had tried to humiliate Maya, but instead he had accidentally revealed her incredible gift to the world. Eleanor noticed the tension between Maya and Marcus. "What exactly happened here tonight?" she asked. Maya hesitated. She didn't want to cause trouble. She needed this job. But she also didn't want to pretend that Marcus had been kind to her. "He made me play," Maya said quietly. "I told him I didn't want to, but he insisted. He said it was to encourage me, but I think he just wanted to watch me fail." The crowd's mood shifted immediately. People started looking at Marcus with disapproval. Several guests began murmuring to each other. Marcus's face turned red. "That's not true," Marcus said defensively. "I was trying to give Maya an opportunity to share her talent." Eleanor looked at Marcus with ice-cold eyes. "Young man, I have been around music and musicians for my entire life. I know the difference between someone who wants to help and someone who wants to hurt. What you did tonight was cruel." Jonathan Webb, the newspaper reporter, was taking notes. "Mr. Blackwell, is it true that you forced Ms. Rodriguez to perform against her will?" Marcus looked around the room desperately. All of his important guests were staring at him with judgment. His plan to embarrass Maya had not only failed, but it had made him look terrible in front of everyone who mattered in his social circle. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Marcus said weakly. But Eleanor wasn't finished with him. "There's no misunderstanding. You saw a young woman who was working hard to make a living, and you decided to use her for your entertainment. That's not charity. That's cruelty." Maya felt embarrassed that everyone was arguing about her. "Please, it's okay. I don't want to cause trouble." "Maya," Eleanor said firmly, "you are not causing trouble. You are an extraordinary musician who deserves to be treated with respect. What happened here tonight should never happen to anyone." The reporter was still taking notes. Maya realized that this story might end up in the newspaper. Her grandmother would read about it. Her old friends might see it. The whole world might know about what happened. "I really should get back to work," Maya said again. "My shift isn't over." But Eleanor shook her head. "Your shift as a server might not be over, but your life as a hidden musician just ended. Maya, what you played tonight was perfection. I have heard the world's greatest pianists, and very few of them could play Chopin's ballad with the skill and emotion you just showed." Someone in the crowd called out, "She should record an album." Another person said she should give concerts. Maya felt dizzy. This was all too much. She had spent 7 years accepting that music was in her past. She had made peace with being a server for the rest of her life. Now suddenly everyone was talking about her like she could be a professional musician. "I can't," Maya said. "I have responsibilities. I have to take care of my grandmother. I need a steady job with health insurance." Eleanor smiled. "Maya, talented musicians don't have to choose between music and financial security. There are scholarships and grants and opportunities. There are ways to have both." The photographer was still taking pictures. The reporter was still asking questions. People were pulling out their phones to record videos. Maya realized that her life was changing whether she wanted it to or not. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a little voice was reminding her of how it felt to play piano again, how it felt to touch the keys and create something beautiful, how it felt to remember who she used to be before life forced her to become someone else. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to find her way back to the music that had always lived in her heart. But first, she needed to figure out how to handle the chaos that was about to explode around her life. The crowd around Maya was getting bigger. More people were pulling out their phones to record videos. The reporter was asking question after question. Maya felt like she couldn't breathe. "Please," she said. "This is all too much. I just want some space." Eleanor immediately stepped in front of Maya like a protective mother. "Everyone needs to step back and give this young woman some room," she announced in a voice that commanded respect. The crowd moved back a few steps, but they didn't leave. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Maya was the most interesting thing that had happened at a charity event in years. Marcus was standing at the edge of the group, looking more uncomfortable by the minute. People were starting to whisper about him. They were putting together the pieces of what had really happened tonight. A well-dressed woman approached Marcus with a stern look on her face. "Marcus, I need to speak with you privately," she said in a low voice. Maya recognized her as Mrs. Patricia Hamilton, one of the richest and most powerful women in the city. If Mrs. Hamilton was angry with Marcus, that was very bad news for him. Patricia, I can explain, Marcus started to say. You can explain later, Mrs. Hamilton said coldly. Right now, I think you owe this young woman an apology. Other guests were nodding in agreement. Marcus looked around the room and realized that his social standing was in serious danger. These people controlled his business relationships and his reputation. If they decided he was cruel and heartless, it could ruin him. Maya, Marcus said, walking toward her with his hands up like he was surrendering, I want to apologize. I never meant to make you uncomfortable. Maya looked at him with skepticism. A few minutes ago, he had been forcing her to play piano against her will. Now suddenly he was sorry? You embarrassed me in front of all these people, Maya said quietly. You made me feel like I was just entertainment for your guests. Marcus's face turned red. He wasn't used to being called out by someone he considered beneath him. But with 50 important people watching, he had to pretend to be humble. You're absolutely right, he said through gritted teeth. I handled the situation poorly. I should have asked your permission first. Eleanor wasn't buying his fake apology. Young man, you didn't handle the situation poorly. You deliberately tried to humiliate someone who was working to serve you and your guests. That's not a mistake. That's a character flaw, the crowd murmured in agreement. Jonathan Webb, the reporter, was writing down every word. Marcus realized that this conversation might end up in tomorrow's newspaper. I think we should focus on the positive, Marcus said desperately. Maya has incredible talent and now the world will know about it. That's a good thing. The world will know about it despite you, not because of you, Eleanor said sharply. You tried to tear her down. Fortunately, you failed. Sarah Chen, the photographer, had been quietly taking pictures throughout the conversation. Now she approached Maya with a business card. Maya, I work for Classical Music Today magazine. We would love to do a feature story about you. This is exactly the kind of inspiring story our readers want to hear. Maya took the card with shaking hands. I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of attention. You don't have to decide tonight, Sarah said kindly. But think about it. Your story could inspire thousands of people who have given up on their dreams. More people were gathering around Maya with business cards and offers. A talent agent wanted to represent her. A recording studio wanted to schedule a session. A music teacher offered free lessons to help her get back in shape. Maya felt overwhelmed. This is happening too fast, she said. I need time to think. Eleanor put her arm around Maya's shoulders. Of course you do, dear. This is a lot to process. She turned to the crowd. Everyone, please give Maya some space. She'll make decisions when she's ready. But not everyone was willing to wait. A man in an expensive suit pushed through the crowd. Maya, I'm David Chen from Steinway Records. We're prepared to offer you a recording contract tonight. Maya's eyes went wide. Steinway Records was one of the biggest classical music labels in the world. A recording contract? Based on what I just heard, absolutely. We could have you in the studio next week. Eleanor held up her hand. Mr. Chen, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but Maya needs time to consider her options. She shouldn't sign anything tonight. Maya was grateful for Eleanor's protection. All of these offers sounded amazing, but she didn't understand the music business. She didn't want to make a mistake that she would regret later. Meanwhile, Marcus was having problems of his own. More guests were approaching him with angry looks on their faces. Word was spreading about how he had treated Maya. Marcus, what you did tonight was unacceptable, said Dr. Robert Chen, a famous surgeon who donated millions to charity every year. I'm reconsidering my support for your future events. Marcus looked panicked. Dr. Chen's support was worth millions of dollars to Marcus's charity foundation. Losing him would be a disaster. Robert, please let me explain, Marcus started. But Dr. Chen wasn't interested in explanations. There's nothing to explain. I saw what happened. You tried to humiliate a hard-working young woman for your own amusement. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Other guests were nodding in agreement. Marcus realized that his reputation was being destroyed in real time. These people would go home and tell their friends what they had witnessed. By tomorrow, everyone in their social circle would know that Marcus Blackwell was cruel to working-class people. Mrs. Hamilton approached Marcus again. Marcus, I think you should leave your own party. Your presence is making everyone uncomfortable. Marcus looked around the room desperately. Half the guests were clustered around Maya, offering her opportunities and support. The other half were staring at him with judgment and disappointment. This is my apartment, Marcus said weakly. Yes, and it's your choice whether you want to salvage any of your reputation, Mrs. Hamilton replied coldly. Marcus realized he had no good options. If he stayed, people would continue to confront him about his behavior. If he left, it would look like he was running away. Either way, his social standing was severely damaged. While Marcus dealt with his humiliation, Maya was still surrounded by people offering her amazing opportunities. But she couldn't focus on any of it. Her mind kept going back to her grandmother at home. "I need to call my grandmother," Maya said suddenly. "She'll be worried about me." Eleanor smiled. "Of course, dear. Why don't you use the bedroom for some privacy?" Maya walked away from the crowd and found a quiet bedroom. She sat on the bed and called her grandmother's number with shaking hands. "Abuela?" Maya said when her grandmother answered. "Mija, how is the party? Are you okay? You sound strange." Maya didn't know how to explain what had happened. "Abuela, something incredible just occurred. I played piano tonight." There was silence on the other end of the phone. Then her grandmother said quietly, "You played piano? But Mija, you haven't played in so long." "I know, but they made me play and then..." "Abuela, everyone thinks I'm really good. There are music people here who want to help me. They're talking about recording contracts and concerts." Her grandmother was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Mija, I always knew this day would come. Your music was too beautiful to stay hidden forever." Maya started crying. "But what about you? What about our life? I can't just abandon everything." "Maya," her grandmother said firmly, "I didn't raise you to be afraid of your dreams. If God has given you this chance, you have to take it." Maya wiped her eyes and looked out the bedroom window at the city lights below. Her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. And for the first time in 7 years, she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved something better than just surviving. Maya returned to the main room after talking to her grandmother. The party was still going on, but everything had changed. People were no longer just eating and drinking. They were talking excitedly about what they had witnessed. Eleanor was waiting for her near the piano. "How are you feeling, dear?" "Scared," Maya admitted, "but also excited." "I haven't felt excited about anything in a long time." Eleanor smiled. "That's perfectly normal. When life changes this quickly, it's natural to feel overwhelmed." She paused and looked around the room. "Maya, I want to make you an offer." Maya listened carefully. "I may be retired from the conservatory, but I still teach private students. I would be honored to work with you to get your skills back to performance level. No charge, of course." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "You would do that for me?" "Maya, your mother was special to me. And after what I heard tonight, you have even more potential than she did. I want to help you reach it." While they were talking, people continued to approach Maya with offers and opportunities. A concert hall manager wanted to book her for a performance. A music festival director invited her to audition. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell her story. But the most interesting conversation came from someone unexpected. Jonathan Webb, the newspaper reporter, pulled Maya aside. "Maya, I want to ask you something important. Are you okay with me writing about what happened here tonight?" Maya thought for a moment. "What would you write?" "The truth. That a talented musician was forced to perform against her will, but instead of being humiliated, she showed the world her incredible gift. I would also write about how Mr. Blackwell treated you and how the other guests responded." Maya looked over at Marcus, who was standing alone near the window. Most of the guests were avoiding him now. His plan to embarrass her had completely backfired. "Will writing about this hurt him?" Maya asked. Jonathan looked surprised. "After what he did to you, you're worried about hurting him?" Maya sighed. "I don't like what he did, but I don't want to ruin his life either. Maya, people need to know when powerful individuals treat working people badly. If I don't write about this, he might do it to someone else." Maya realized he was right. Marcus had probably treated other servers and workers poorly over the years. Maybe if his behavior became public, he would think twice before doing it again. "Okay," Maya said. "You can write the story. But please be fair. Focus on the music and the opportunities, not just on what he did wrong." Jonathan smiled. "You're a very kind person, Maya. The story will be honest but not cruel." As the evening continued, Maya learned more about the people who were offering to help her. David Chen from Steinway Records explained how recording contracts worked. The concert hall manager talked about what it was like to perform for large audiences. Eleanor discussed the technical work Maya would need to do to get back in peak condition. "How long would it take?" Maya asked Eleanor. "To be ready for professional performances?" Eleanor considered the question carefully. For most people, it would take years. But Maya, you're not most people. Your technique is still excellent, and your musical understanding is beyond your years. With intensive practice, you could be performance ready in 6 months. 6 months seemed both impossibly long and incredibly short. Long enough to completely change her life, but short enough to feel real and achievable. What about money? Maya asked quietly. I can't afford to quit my job and take lessons. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. There are scholarships and grants for situations like this. The music community takes care of its own, especially when we discover someone with your level of talent. David Chen overheard their conversation. Maya, if you're interested in our recording contract, we provide an advance payment. That means you would get money up front while we record your album. Maya's head was spinning. An hour ago, she was worried about paying for her grandmother's medicine. Now people were talking about giving her money to pursue music. While Maya was processing all these offers, something else was happening in the room. People were posting videos of her performance on social media. The footage was spreading rapidly across the internet. Sarah Chen, the photographer, showed Maya her phone. Look at this. The video of you playing has already been shared thousands of times. People are calling it the most beautiful piano performance they've ever heard. Maya watched herself on the phone screen. She looked small and nervous at first, but as soon as she started playing, she transformed into someone completely different. Someone confident and powerful and beautiful. I can't believe that's me, Maya whispered. Believe it, Eleanor said. That's the real you. The you that's been hiding for 7 years. As the video spread online, Maya's phone started ringing. The first call was from her old high school music teacher. Maya, is that really you in the video everyone is sharing? I can't believe how beautifully you're playing. The second call was from a girl she had known in youth orchestra. The third was from a local news station wanting to interview her. Maya turned off her phone after the 5th call. This is happening too fast, she said to Eleanor. Eleanor nodded understandingly. Fame can be overwhelming, especially when it happens suddenly. But Maya, you have something special. Don't let fear keep you from sharing it with the world. Near the end of the evening, Maya made a decision. She approached David Chen and Eleanor at the same time. I want to do this, she said. I want to try to be a musician again, but I need to do it the right way. I don't want to rush into anything just because I'm excited. Eleanor smiled proudly. That's very wise. David Chen handed her his business card. Take your time to think about our offer. Good music is worth waiting for. As the party wound down, Maya said goodbye to all the people who had offered to help her. She collected dozens of business cards and phone numbers. Her server uniform pockets were stuffed with opportunities. Marcus approached her as she was getting ready to leave. He looked embarrassed and defeated. Maya, I owe you a real apology, he said quietly. What I did tonight was wrong. I was trying to make myself feel important by making you feel small. That's inexcusable. Maya looked at him for a long moment. Thank you for saying that. I hope you mean it. I do, and I want to make it right somehow. The charity fund from tonight, I want to donate a portion of it to help you pursue your music. Maya was surprised. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. It's the least I can do after trying to humiliate you. Marcus handed her an envelope. This is a check for $10,000. Use it for lessons or living expenses or whatever you need. Maya stared at the envelope. $10,000 was more money than she had ever held in her hands. I can't accept this, she said, please. Let me do this one good thing after doing something so terrible. Maya thought about her grandmother's medicine. She thought about the rent and the bills and all the financial stress that kept her awake at night. She thought about having the freedom to focus on music without worrying about money. Okay, she said finally. Thank you. As Maya rode the subway home that night, she couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. 8 hours ago, she had been a server worried about paying bills. Now she was a viral sensation with recording contract offers and a famous teacher willing to work with her for free. She looked at her reflection in the subway window and barely recognized herself. For the first time in 7 years, she looked like someone with hope. Maya's phone buzzed with another notification. The video of her performance now had over 1 million views. Comments were pouring in from around the world. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Who is this girl? She needs to be famous. I'm crying. This music touched my soul. Maya smiled and put her phone away. Tomorrow she would start making decisions about her future. Tonight she just wanted to go home and tell her grandmother that dreams really could come true, even when you thought they were lost forever. 6 months later, Maya stood backstage at Carnegie Hall wearing a beautiful black concert dress. Her hands were shaking, but this time it was from excitement, not fear. In 30 minutes, she would walk onto one of the most famous stages in the world. The past 6 months had been like living in a dream. After the night at Marcus's party, everything changed faster than Maya could have imagined. The video of her performance had gone viral worldwide, with over 50 million views across different platforms. Within a week, Maya had been interviewed by major newspapers and television shows. Music critics called her the discovery of the decade. Classical music fans created online communities dedicated to following her story. Young musicians from around the world sent her messages saying she had inspired them to never give up on their dreams. But the most important change was in Maya's daily life. She had quit her job at the restaurant and begun intensive training with Eleanor. Every day from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. they worked on technique, interpretation, and repertoire. Maya's fingers remembered everything they had learned years ago, and they learned new things even faster than before. "You're not just getting back to where you were," Eleanor had told her after the first month. "You're becoming better than you ever were. Sometimes taking a break from music, even an unwanted break, can make you a deeper artist." Maya had signed with Steinway Records and recorded her first album. It featured the Chopin pieces that had always been her favorites, along with works by Mozart, Beethoven, and Debussy. The album was called Hidden Dreams, and it had debuted at #1 on the classical music charts. Tonight's concert at Carnegie Hall was sold out. All 2,804 seats were filled with people who wanted to hear the server-turned-virtuoso perform live. Maya's grandmother was sitting in the front row, wearing a new dress that Maya had bought for her. Eleanor was there too, beaming with pride at her student's success. Even some unexpected faces were in the audience. Marcus Blackwell had bought a ticket and come to hear Maya play. After the disaster at his party, he had spent months thinking about his behavior and trying to become a better person. He had started volunteering at music schools in poor neighborhoods and had donated money to help other young musicians pursue their dreams. Maya peeked through the curtain at the audience. So many people had come to hear her play. A year ago, she had thought her musical life was over forever. Now she was about to perform at one of the most prestigious venues in the world. A stagehand approached her. "Miss Rodriguez, it's time." Maya took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The audience erupted in applause before she had even reached the piano. She sat down at the beautiful Steinway grand piano and placed her hands on the keys. For a moment, Maya thought about the journey that had brought her here. She thought about her parents who had sacrificed to give her music lessons when she was young. She thought about her grandmother, who had supported her dreams even when they seemed impossible. She thought about Eleanor, who had welcomed her back to the music world with open arms. She even thought about Marcus and that terrible night when he had tried to humiliate her. In a strange way, she was grateful to him. If he hadn't forced her to play, none of this would have happened. Sometimes the worst moments in life lead to the best opportunities. Maya began to play. Her first piece was the same Chopin ballade that had changed her life 6 months ago. But tonight she played it even better than before. Months of intensive practice had refined her technique. Months of studying with Eleanor had deepened her understanding of the music. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every note. Maya could feel their attention and appreciation, but she didn't feel nervous anymore. This was where she belonged. This was what she was meant to do. As she played, Maya thought about all the young people who might be watching online or listening to the radio broadcast. She hoped her story would inspire them to never give up on their talents, no matter how impossible their dreams might seem. The first piece ended to thunderous applause. Maya played 5 more pieces. Each one met with even more enthusiasm from the audience. For her final piece, she chose something special, a Mozart sonata that her mother had loved. As the last notes faded away, the entire audience rose to their feet. The applause was deafening. People were cheering and calling for an encore. Maya saw her grandmother in the front row, tears streaming down her face with pride and joy. After 3 encores, Maya finally left the stage. Backstage, she was surrounded by congratulations and praise. Eleanor hugged her tightly. "Your mother would be so proud," Eleanor whispered. "You've become everything she dreamed you could be." Maya's grandmother made her way backstage, moving carefully with her walking cane. Maya rushed to embrace her. Mija, that was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard, her grandmother said through her tears. I always knew you were special, but tonight you were magical. Later that evening, at the reception after the concert, Maya was surrounded by music industry executives, critics, and other musicians. Everyone wanted to talk to her, to work with her, to be part of her success. But the conversation that meant the most to Maya came from an unexpected source. Marcus Blackwell approached her nervously. Maya, I don't know if you remember me, he began. Of course I remember you, Maya said kindly. How are you? Marcus looked ashamed. I wanted to apologize again for what I did that night. And I wanted to thank you. Thank me. What happened at my party changed me. Seeing how cruel I had been, and seeing how gracefully you handled it made me realize I needed to be a better person. Marcus paused. I've been volunteering at music schools and helping kids who can't afford lessons. It's the most meaningful thing I've ever done. Maya smiled. I'm glad something good came from that night for both of us. You could have destroyed me with what I did. Instead, you showed kindness and forgiveness. That taught me more about being human than anything else ever has. As the evening wound down, Maya found herself standing alone on the balcony of the reception hall, looking out over the city. Eleanor joined her. How does it feel to have your dreams come true? Eleanor asked. Maya thought for a moment. It feels wonderful, but also strange. A year ago, I thought I was just meant to be a server for the rest of my life. I had accepted that my music was in the past. And now? Now I realize that dreams don't really die. They just wait for the right moment to come back to life. Eleanor smiled. Your story gives hope to so many people. Every young musician who sees what you've accomplished will believe that their dreams are possible too. Maya nodded. That's the best part of all this. Not the fame or the money, but knowing that maybe I can inspire someone else to keep trying. As Maya rode home that night, she thought about how completely her life had changed. She lived in a beautiful apartment now, with a real piano where she could practice whenever she wanted. Her grandmother had the best medical care money could buy. They never worried about rent or bills anymore. But the most important change wasn't financial. Maya had found herself again. She had reconnected with the part of her soul that had been sleeping for 7 years. She was no longer just surviving. She was truly living. The next morning, Maya woke up to hundreds of messages and emails. Critics were calling her Carnegie Hall debut extraordinary and the performance of a lifetime. Record labels were offering her even bigger contracts. Concert halls around the world wanted to book her, but the message that meant the most came from a 17-year-old girl in Ohio who wrote, I saw your story on the news and I decided not to give up on my violin lessons. If you can make your dreams come true after 7 years away from music, then maybe I can too. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to follow your heart. Maya smiled and wiped away a tear. This was why everything had happened the way it did. Not just so she could have a successful career, but so she could prove that dreams really can survive anything life throws at them. Outside her window, New York City was waking up. Somewhere in the city, other young musicians were practicing in small apartments, hoping that someday they would get their chance to share their gifts with the world. Maya sat down at her piano and began to play, adding her music to the symphony of dreams that filled the city every morning. Her story was proof that beautiful things can grow from the most difficult circumstances, and that sometimes the moments that seem like endings are actually new beginnings in disguise.